Hey everybody, Ryan here at etrailer. Today we're going to be talking about how to choose a brake controller that's going to be right for you and your particular application. When it comes to picking out a trailer brake controller for your particular setup, things can get kind of overwhelming pretty quick. You know, there's just so many different options out there and so many available, things can kind of start to get confusing. So the purpose of today's video is just to kind of break that down, simplify it, and hopefully kind of get you going in the right direction on what type of brake controller will be right for your vehicle. So today we just pulled out a handful of them. These ones are all really popular. A lot of people have had good luck with them and are highly rated, and ones that we've had good luck with. So we're just going to be kind of using these as an example. And right off the bat, we're not going to get into the fine details about them, but we will touch base on, you know, some of those later on, whether they're time delay or proportional, and we'll kind of elaborate on all that as well. But with that said, why don't we kind of get right into it? In an attempt to simplify things, I broke our brake controllers down into 3 different categories, and this is just what I like to call them, right? So we have our wireless type, which are these 2 here. I like to call these 2 in the middle more factory-like options. And then these over here, I like to call them more of the classic or traditional type brake controllers. And so they all kind of have a place. You know, they'll all work, but some might be a better fit for different types of vehicles or different types of situations. But with that said, we'll just kind of start to work our way down here and explain to you, you know, certain scenarios where one might be a better fit for you. For our wireless ones, we have the Curt Echo, which is this here, and then there's also a Curt Echo Underdash trailer brake controller, which is this one here. We'll start with just the kind of the standard Curt Echo wireless brake controller, and this thing's pretty cool. We've had a lot of good luck with it, and they're gaining in popularity. Essentially, these are going to be for those of you that don't want anything on the dash, right? You're not going to have any buttons or anything along those lines to mess with. With this one, it's pretty unique. So all this is going to do is plug into your vehicle's 7-way, and then on this end you're going to plug in the 7-way from your trailer, and everything's going to work essentially off your mobile device via Bluetooth, and that's going to tell the trailer when to apply the brakes and everything else like that. So this would probably be a good fit for those of you that, one, don't really tow all that often, just because you don't really have to mess with anything. You can throw this in your glove box. Or for those of you that have multiple tow vehicles. You know, I know some people have a big truck or something like that to tow heavier stuff, and then they might have a smaller camper that they like to pull with their van, get better gas mileage, whatever the case may be, because this is interchangeable. You know, this isn't married to a particular vehicle. You could use it over the weekend and then let your buddy borrow it the next day, and you won't run into any issues there. Or for those of you that maybe, you know, constantly trade in vehicles, you know, you hold on to your car for a year or so and get a new one, you can keep this with you and use it for the new car. So it's pretty neat, and would be a good fit for those of you in that particular situation. And then with the Underdash one, essentially this is going to be very similar to this, but this will be essentially permanently installed on your vehicle. You won't see this, you know, you can tuck this up under the dash and whatnot, and it's going to work the same way kind of, but it's going to be more permanently attached. If you're not looking for any buttons, but you do tow a lot, or you plan on holding on to your vehicle for a long time, this would be one to consider, and it's going to work the same way. You know, once this is plugged in, you're going to use your mobile device to set everything up and control it. One more thing with these 2 that I just want to touch base on. It seemed like when these first came out, some people did want to have a little bit of control of the manual override. So that's the button you can push to apply just your trailer brakes. And they didn't like the idea of having to use their phone. So if that's what you end up going with, and that's your thought too, they actually make a wireless button that will sync up with these, and you can stick this wherever you want it really, and that'll be your manual override button. So pretty cool. If that's something you're looking to do, there's definitely a solution for you there. So something you can check out. But now that we kind of touch base on the wireless ones, let's move over to our red arcs, or our factory type ones, what I like to call them. So right here we have the Red Arc Tow Pro Elite, and this red one is the Red Arc Tow Pro Liberty. And these are super popular. We do a lot of them. I'm a big fan of them. They're really high quality and they just flat out work, you know, they really do. And the reason I kind of dub them factory like is because what you're going to see on your dashboard or wherever you decide to mount this is very, very minimal. The only thing you're going to be able to see is this little knob or this dial here. And that holds true for both of them, whether you have the Elite or the Liberty. And so it looks really good. It blends into a lot of different dashboards and it's usually relatively easy to mount. You know, the knobs are relatively small and you can usually sneak them in just about any place. The thing is with these, you know, they're really feature heavy. You can do a lot of cool things with them. And essentially all those things that you can do are just controlled from the single dial. So you can make your adjustments, push down on it for your manual override, and everything in between. Something I did notice, especially over the last few years, when it comes to the red arcs, I feel like these are getting more sought after because a lot of the late model or modern vehicles, the dashboards, there's just so much going on. You know, there's so many buttons, there's not a lot of room, and so many different options and electronics and whatnot. It just really limits you on where you can mount stuff up. So for example, a lot of these newer vehicles, there's not space to put, you know, some of these classic ones on the dash. You don't want to drill into it or, you know, hit an airbag or something like that. So I feel like that's why a lot of people are going after these, which makes sense because you have that mounting versatility. You only have to worry about one little piece here. And not to mention, they also make some panels as well. Little knockout panels for a lot of the popular vehicles. Just push a little piece of plastic out, push their piece in, and it gives you a perfect factory looking option to mount up the knobs. And once again, you know, we'll show you some of these actually in these vehicles and kind of come back to talk about, you know, the features a little bit more in depth. But I just wanted to kind of cover our bases real quick. That way at least it'll give you an idea on what one or what style you need to focus on. Moving on to our classic type brake controllers. You know, these go from super simple to really loaded up or feature heavy and everything in between. So there's a ton of different options with these and nothing wrong with them at all. You know, they're tried and true. This style's been around for a long time and in some cases makes sense to use in a particular vehicle. So if you got a lot of dash space or maybe an older vehicle that doesn't have all those options like we talked about earlier with the red arc, you know, definitely something to consider. Or, you know, a lot of times these will be a more economical option, and just depending what you're trying to accomplish there. So for example, we have our Hayes synchronizer, which is this one here. Very simple. You know, it's a time delayed brake controller and it'll get the job done. You know, it's not going to be able to do all these crazy different things and have a ton of adjustments, but it will apply the trailer brakes. And then you have, for example, your Takancha P3, which is this one here. And this one can do just about anything. You know, there's a ton of adjustments and a ton of different things you can do with this one, which is really cool. Then you kind of have something that falls in the middle, which is our Takancha even brake. One of the things I actually do like about this one, it is relatively small for what it is, you know, about the size of a deck of cards. You have some adjustments, some adjustability, and it'll still definitely get the job done. I have been kind of throwing that term around, time delay and proportional, and so I just want to take a second and explain that because that is a big difference between a lot of these brake controllers, right? Usually what I recommend is proportional type ones, and this is just my opinion, but I feel like they offer more of a smooth braking experience, a little more controlled, and you know, it gives you a little more peace of mind, at least when it comes down to my opinion. So what proportional actually means is however hard you hit the brakes in your vehicle, that's how hard the trailer brakes are going to be applied, right? So let's say if you're rolling up to a stop sign, something like that, and you're about halfway on the brake, trailer brakes are going to do the same thing. On the other hand, if you're going down a big hill or there's an accident up ahead and you really have to stand on that brake pedal, trailer brakes are going to match that. And so in a sense, you're kind of stopping as a whole unit or in unison, and it just, it kind of provides a smoother experience. On the other hand, when it comes to time delayed, it means exactly what it sounds like. There's going to be a preset amount of delay in the brake controller when you hit the brakes in here, and they're also going to be kind of a preset aggressiveness or how hard those brakes are going to be applied. So, sometimes you can change it up a little bit, but let's say if you hit the brake and a few seconds later trailer brakes come on, you kind of get what you get. You know what I mean? It's not really adjusting on the fly. With nowadays, the majority of the brake controllers are going to be proportional, and my thought is it's a little bit better in most instances. Why not take advantage of that and use it? However, there is a time and place for time delay. If that's what you're familiar with, if you have an older truck or something and that's what you had forever, nothing wrong with it. It'll still work. But for the reasons I just explained, that's kind of why I favor proportional type brake controllers. The Kurt Echo, this here, is going to be a proportional brake controller, and honestly, I'm kind of a good fit myself for this brake controller, and I say that because I don't really tow all that often, trailers that have brakes at least, and generally I only hold on to cars every couple years. After about 2, maybe 3 years, I get into something else. And so that's what I use, because I can take this with me. I don't have to modify my vehicle to use this, and whenever I get in a different vehicle, I can hold on to this and use it in that as well. So it's pretty convenient. I'll have something like this for life essentially, and it'll always work out. And just kind of a quick rundown how it works. It plugs into the 7-way, and then your trailer plugs in to the other side, and then you get on your mobile device, download the app, and that's how you're going to control everything. So back inside, won't get too carried away here, but I just wanted to show you, this is the way the app's going to look, and you have all your adjustments and everything else. And I talked about that manual override button. So essentially this is the manual override button, and that's what some people didn't like, it being on the screen. And so that's where this will come into play. You can stick that on the dash wherever you want, and still be able to use both. So pretty cool. The Kurt under dash trailer brake controller is essentially going to be the same thing. It's going to look the same on your app and everything else, but instead of this being removable essentially and plug it into the back of your 7-way, this will just get wired in and hide under the dash where you're not going to be able to see it. But same concept essentially. And one of the things I was concerned about when I first heard about this was, what if your phone or your mobile device dies, or you close out of the app or whatever? And they thought all that through, because obviously trailer brakes are important, safety, right? And if something like that happens, it's going to remember all those presets that you have in here, how you have it set up, and just run off that. So nothing to worry about there if that particular situation does end up happening. As far as the factory type brake controllers go, at least how I like to phrase them, this is a really good example. So we have a late model pickup truck, and we actually have the Red Arc Liberty installed on this one. So really clean. You hardly even notice it's there, but it's super easy to get to, super easy to operate. So like I said, this particular one's a Liberty. The Elite is going to look very, very similar, the same idea. And all your adjustments are made right there on the fly and everything else. And so you can kind of see where this comes into play in a lot of scenarios, a lot going on in the dash, not a whole lot of room, especially this particular vehicle. He has a few kids, car seats in the back. You got to sit up a little bit closer to give the kiddo some space. And if you had a brake controller, a traditional style one here, it'd get annoying real quick. So end up working out perfect, and is a great option for those of you that are trying to go that direction. As far as the classic type brake controllers go, here's a great example, the one that we have in our Dodge Ram here today. This is the Takancha P3. So you can kind of see what I'm talking about, how these mount up on the dash, and in some vehicles it's just not ideal. This one, pretty good fit. This is a work truck, kind of his workhorse. He really don't care so much about the appearance, and you know, there's a lot of room to work with and everything else. So something like this in here makes sense. You know, not to say that the other ones wouldn't be a good fit or work in here either, because they will, but you know, I'm just trying to give you some ideas on something that you can build off of. And now we have the Toyota 4Runner here. So really versatile vehicle. It's kind of like a Jeep almost, you know. And honestly, any of these style of brake controllers kind of just makes sense. And it's really just going to be your preference, you know. There's plenty of space down here to use the traditional style one or the classic one. This is the hay synchronizer that he used. And he chose to use the time delayed one like this because grew up using it. Like that's what he's familiar with. And so I wanted to kind of stay true to that, which definitely understandable. This is a good example too of how the red arc can look. So a lot of times in these Toyotas and other vehicles, you'll have these factory knockouts here from where there could be other, you know, options in terms of what it comes with from the factory. But a lot of times you have a couple blanks. And for a lot of vehicles, Red Arc makes little panels here. You could pop them out and plug that brake controller in and have the knob right there. So pretty cool. Looks really factory. And obviously we know about the wireless one. So, you know, in something like this, you could go any which way really. And it just kind of come down to your personal preference. But now that we've seen a couple examples, you know, actually in vehicles and how these look and everything else, something else that can determine what brake controller is going to be best for you is how you actually plan on using it, right? What type of trailer you're going to be pulling. Primarily, how many axles is it going to have? You know, do you have that single or double axle trailer and that's all you plan on towing? Or do you have a big triple axle trailer? Or maybe you're in the service industry and you don't know what trailer you're going to be pulling that day. And that's going to kind of determine, you know, where you want to go as well. And thankfully, kind of within each category, there's other specs that you can choose from. So for example, let's say if you like the wireless, the thought of the wireless, right? So the Kurt Echoes here. This particular one is going to work for trailers that have 1 to 2 axles. But if, you know, if you're pulling trailers that are bigger than that, the under the dash one will work for 1 to 4 axles. So a big spread there. As far as the red arcs go, the Liberty is going to work for trailers that have up to 2 axles. And then if you need to go even bigger than that, the Elite will work with trailers that have up to 3 axles. So it kind of covers, generally speaking, covers everything there. And then in terms of these, the classic type ones are a synchronizer here, the time delay one, that's going to work with trailers up to 2. And both the Takancha break even and the P3 are going to work for 1 to 4 axles. So you have a lot to choose from. And like I said, thankfully, kind of within each category, we have a couple of options to roll with. Something I just want to throw out real quick too, I think it's worth mentioning, especially with kind of off-grid camping getting more and more popular. If that's what you plan on doing, the TowPro Elite by Red Arc is definitely the one I'd recommend. And I say it because, you know, like we talked about, it's a proportional type brake controller. But then once you get kind of off-road, you can change this to a different mode, which is called user control. And it's going to allow you to kind of preset how you want the trailer to brake, right? So when you start getting on that sand or mud or gravel, getting to your camp spot, sometimes you don't want the trailer to brake in proportion. You want it to be preset, right? So it gives you ultimate adjustability there and can make your experience a little bit better. So probably not a huge deal for a lot of people, but something I just wanted to mention and kind of go over real quick. One of the things we do get a lot of questions about is installation, right? Do all these plug in? Do you have to run wires? What do you need to do? And it's going to be kind of tricky to answer that, you know, so vaguely because every vehicle is set up a little bit different. But I'll do my best here to kind of at least get you going. So generally speaking, a lot of times if you have a bigger truck or SUV and you have a factory 7-way trailer connector at the back and a factory hitch, a lot of times what you'll find underneath the dash, there will actually be a factory connector, a brake controller connector plug. And if your vehicle has that, almost with every brake controller out there, there's an adapter. So you could plug into your factory one, plug into the brake controller, and then mount things up and go from there. And it's pretty straightforward. Other times that's not always the case. You know, if your vehicle doesn't have that, or almost all the time, if your vehicle doesn't come equipped with a factory tow package, you're gonna have to do a few other things. You know, obviously you'll need your trailer hitch if you plan on towing, and then you'll need a 4-way flat wiring connector, so kind of the standard trailer wiring, if you will. And then you can pick up a universal brake controller install kit that we carry. It has a 7-way, some wiring, some breakers, and other things to kind of allow you to wire everything up and hook up your brake controller. Now, like I said, this is generally speaking, that'll cover most scenarios, but sometimes there are oddball vehicles that kind of have a combination of the both, or sometimes they're not equipped with them and everything else. So, you know, you can always refer to some of the other content that we have here, and maybe that'll give you an idea, or you know, find a couple of things to look for. One of the other different things with the Echo here, the one that plugs into the 7-way, obviously if you have a factory 7-way, you plug this in, it'll fire right up, right? If you don't, there's another kit similar to that brake controller kit. It just comes with a few less things, and essentially it's going to give you your 7-way round and your 12-volt power, because this, you just need that 12-volt power to turn this thing on. You don't need some of the other things that other kit has. So if this is the one you're leaning towards, that's definitely something worth checking out if your vehicle isn't equipped with that factory 7-way. So in short, you know, what brake controller is going to be best for you is really just going to depend on your preference and how you plan on using it. You know, if it were me and I had to kind of give a summary, let's say if I had a work truck or something along those lines, I'd be perfectly fine with using the classic style ones here. You know, within those, I'd probably pick the P3 just because of all the options it has and all the cool things you can do with it. If you're looking for something a little more economical, the Takantra one here, you get a lot of bang for your buck with it. And it's pretty small too, so that's always a bonus. You know, if I had, let's say, more of a late model vehicle, or a Jeep, or something I was really concerned with in terms of appearance, and I wanted something that was real high quality and very reliable, you definitely can't go wrong with either of the red arcs. You know, which one I would go with would just depend on how I plan on using it, kind of like we talked about earlier. You know, either one is definitely not a bad choice. And then, you know, like my particular situation, like I said about my truck, you know, not towing that often, and I change vehicles a lot, that's where the Echo wireless one that plugs in the 7-way would come into play. And if I didn't want to see anything at all on the dash, that's where the under dash one would come into play. They're all going to work in the majority of the situations, even ones that we don't have on our table here today. You know, there's tons of them out there, and all going to kind of do the same thing. So as long as you can sort through them and find the one that's going to work best for you, I feel like that's what's really important, because you're going to have to live with it every day. You know, it's in your vehicle, and you want something that's kind of catered to your particular needs. But other than that, you know, I feel like that's what it's really going to boil down to, and hopefully this video that we did here today can kind of simplify things for you and help you figure out what brake controller to pick up.